Chapter 11. Guiliano's band now numbered 30 men. Some of these were former members of the Passatempo and Terranova bands. Some were citizens of Montelepre who had been freed from prison by Guiliano's raid. They had found there was to be no forgiveness by the authorities despite their innocence. They were still being hunted. They decided to be hunted with Guiliano rather than be tracked down alone and friendless. One fine April morning, Guiliano's informants in Montelepre sent word that a dangerous-looking man, perhaps a police spy, was making inquiries about joining the band. He was waiting in the central square. Guiliano sent Terranova and 4 men into Montelepre to investigate. If the man was a spy, they would kill him. If he was someone of use, they would recruit him. Early in the afternoon, Terranova returned and told Guiliano, "We have the fellow, and before we shoot him, we thought you might like to make his acquaintance." Guiliano laughed when he saw the burly figure dressed in the traditional peasant Sicilian working garb. "Well, old friend, do you think I could ever forget your face? Have you come with better bullets this time?" It was the corporal of the Carabinieri, Canio Silvestro, who had fired his pistol at Guiliano's head during the famous jailbreak. Silvestro's strong, scarred face was intent. The face appealed to Guiliano for some reason. He had a soft spot in his heart for this man who had helped him prove his immortality. Silvestro said, "I've come to join up. I can be invaluable to you." He said this proudly as one who is about to make a gift. This also pleased Guiliano. He let Silvestro tell his story. After the raid on the jail, Corporal Silvestro had been sent to Palermo to face a court-martial for dereliction of duty. His Maresialo had been furious with him and had interrogated him closely before recommending prosecution. Oddly enough, the one circumstance that inflamed the Maresialo's suspicion was the corporal's attempted shooting of Guiliano. The cause of the misfire had been found to be defective ammunition. The Maresialo claimed that the corporal had loaded his gun with that one harmless bullet knowing it was defective, that the whole attempted resistance had been a charade, and that Corporal Silvestro had helped Guiliano plan the jailbreak and stationed his guards to help the raid succeed. Guiliano interrupted. "How did you think you could have known the bullets were defective?" Silvestro looked sheepish. "I should have known. I was the armorer in the infantry, an expert." His face became grim and he shrugged. "I had a lapse, true. They made me a desk man and I didn't pay too much attention to my real business. But I can be valuable to you. I can be your armorer. I can check all your weapons and repair them. I can make sure your ammunition is properly handled so that your supply dumps don't blow up. I can modify your weapons so that they will suit the use you put them to, here in the mountains." "Tell me the rest of your story," Guiliano said. He was studying the man closely. This could be a plan to infiltrate his band with an informer. He could see that Pisciotta, Passatempo, and Terranova were full of distrust. Silvestro went on. "They were all fools and they were all frightened women. The Maresialo knew that it was stupid of him to take most of the men into the mountains when we had barracks full of prisoners. The Carabinieri regarded Sicily as some foreign-occupied country. I used to protest against that attitude, and that got me in their bad books. And the authorities in Palermo wanted to protect their Maresialo. They were responsible for him after all. It would look better if the Belampo barracks had been betrayed from within instead of taken over by men who were braver and more clever. They didn't court-martial me. They told me to resign. They said it would be without prejudice, but I know them better than that. I'll never get a government job again. I'm fitted for nothing else, and I'm a Sicilian patriot. So I thought to myself, what can I do with my life? And I said to myself, I will go to Guiliano." Guiliano sent to the cooking site for food and drink and then conferred with his chefs. Passatempo was gruff and positive. "What kind of fools do they think we are? Shoot him and throw his body off the cliff. We don't need Carabinieri in our band." Pisciotta saw that Guiliano was once again taken by the corporal. He knew his friend's impulsive emotions, so he said carefully, "It's most likely a trick. But even if it's not, why take the chance? We'll have to worry all the time. There will always be doubt. Why not just send him back? Terranova said. He knows our camp. He's seen some of our men and he knows their number. That is valuable information. Guiliano said. He's a true Sicilian. He acts out of a sense of honor. I can't believe he would act the part of a spy. He saw that they all smiled at his innocence. Pisciotta said, Remember, he tried to kill you. He had a concealed weapon and he was a prisoner and he tried to kill you out of sheer temper and with no hope of escape. Guiliano thought, and that's what makes him valuable to me. Aloud he said, Doesn't that prove he is a man of honor? He was defeated but felt that he had to die avenging himself. And what harm can he do? He'll be a member of the common band. We won't take him into our confidence. And we'll keep a close eye on him. I'll give him my personal attention. When the time is ripe, we'll put him to a test that he must refuse if he is a spy for the Carabinieri. Leave him to me. Later that evening, when he told Silvestro that he was now a member of the band, the man simply said, You can count on me for anything. He understood that Guiliano had again saved him from death. At Easter time, Guiliano visited his family. Pisciotta had argued against this, saying the police might set a trap. Easter in Sicily had always been a traditional death day for bandits. The police counted on the deep ties of family to bring outlaws sneaking down from the mountains to visit their loved ones. But Guiliano's spies brought word that the Maresialo himself would be visiting his family on the mainland and that half the garrison at the Belampo barracks had been given leave to celebrate the holiday in Palermo. Guiliano decided that he would bring enough men with him to make it safe. He slipped into Montelepre on Holy Saturday. He had sent word of his visit a few days before and his mother had prepared a feast. That night he slept in his childhood bed, and the next day, when his mother went to morning mass, Guiliano accompanied her to church. He had a bodyguard of 6 men who were also visiting their families in the town but had orders to accompany Guiliano wherever he went. As he came out of the church with his mother, his 6 bodyguards were waiting for him with Pisciotta. Aspano's face was white with fury as he said, You have been betrayed, Turi. The Maresialo has returned from Palermo with 20 extra men to arrest you. They have your mother's house surrounded. They think you're inside. Guiliano felt for one moment a kind of anger at his own rashness and stupidity and resolved he would never be so careless again. Not that the Maresialo with his 20 men could have captured him even in his mother's house. His bodyguards would have ambushed them, and there would have been a bloody battle. But that would have spoiled the spirit of his Easter homecoming. The day Christ had risen was not the day to break the peace. He kissed his mother goodbye and told her to return home and freely admit to the police that she had left him at the church. In that way she could not have been charged with any conspiracy. He told her not to worry, that he and his men were heavily armed and would easily escape. There would not even be any fighting. The Carabinieri would not dare to follow them into the mountains. Guiliano and his men left without even being sighted by the police. That night in the mountain camp, Guiliano questioned Pisciotta. How could the Maresialo have known about the visit? Who was the informer? Everything must be done to find out. That will be your special task, Aspano, he said. And if there is one, there may be others. I don't care how long it takes or how much money we spend, you must find out. Even as a child, Pisciotta had never liked the buffoonish barber of Montelepre. Frizella was one of those barbers who cut hair to suit his mood of the day, one time modishly, another time puckishly, another time with the extreme conservativeness of a peasant farmer. By varying his style, he put forward his claim to being an artist. He was also too familiar with his superiors and too patronizing to his equals. With children he was playful in that particularly spiteful Sicilian style which is one of the less peasant sides of the island character. He would nip their ears with the scissors and sometimes cut their hair so short that their heads looked like billiard balls. So it was with grim satisfaction that Pisciotta reported to Guiliano that Frizella the barber was the police spy and had broken the sacred code of Omerta. It was obvious that the Maresialo was not making a random strike that Easter day. He must have received information that Turi would be there. And how could he have gotten that information since Turi had sent word to his family only 24 hours before? Pisciotta used his own informers in the village to check on every step the Mariciallo had taken during that 24 hours. And since only Guiliano's mother and father had known about the visit, he questioned them casually to see if they might have accidentally given anything away. Maria Lombardo soon smelled out his intention. She said to him, "I spoke to no one, not even my neighbors. I stayed in the house and cooked so that Turi would have an Easter feast." But Guiliano's father had gone to the barber Frizella on the morning of his son's visit. The old man was a little vain, and he wanted to look his best on the rare occasions when his son Turi came to visit at the house in Montelepre. Frizella had shaved and barbered the old man and made his usual jokes. Was Signor perhaps going to Palermo to visit certain young ladies there? Was he receiving important visitors from Rome? He, Frizella, would make Signor Guiliano look handsome enough to receive a king. Guiliano's father, with a little secretive smile on his face as he grumbled that a man could look like a gentleman for no reason except his own satisfaction, and yet the swelling of importance at knowing his son was famous enough to be called the King of Montelepre. Perhaps the old man had come in on the other occasions, and the barber had learned that Guiliano visited the same day and so put two and two together. Mariciallo Roccofino dropped into the barber shop every morning for his daily shave. There did not seem to be any conversation that could convey information from the barber to the policeman. But Pisciotta was certain. He sent spies to the barber shop to lounge around all day and play cards with Frizella at the little table he kept out on the street. They drank wine, talked politics, and shouted insults at friends who passed by. Over the weeks, Pisciotta's spies gathered more information. Frizella always whistled the tune of one of his favorite opera arias when he shaved and cut hair. Sometimes the large oval-shaped radio would play with recordings from Rome. This would always be the case when he attended the Mariciallo, and there would always be a time when he leaned over the police officer and whispered something. If you were not suspicious, it was only a barber being deferential to the wishes of his customer's pleasure. But then one of Pisciotta's spies got a look at the lira note the Mariciallo used to pay for his service. They noticed it was folded, and the barber put it in a special watch fob pocket in his vest, underneath his white coat. When the spy and one of his helpers confronted Frizella and forced him to show the note, it was of 10,000 lire denomination. The barber swore it was for his services over the past few months, and the spies pretended to believe him. Pisciotta gave his evidence to Guiliano in the presence of Terranova, Passatempo, and Corporal Silvestro. They were in their camp in the mountains, and Guiliano went to the edge of one of the cliffs that overlooked Montelepre and stared down at the town. Master Frizella, the barber, had been a part of the town ever since Guiliano could remember. As a little boy he had gone to Frizella to have his hair cut for Holy Confirmation, and Frizella had given him a small silver coin as a gift. He knew Frizella's wife and son. Frizella had shouted jokes to him in the streets and always asked after his mother and father. But now Frizella had broken the sacred law of Omerta. He had sold secrets to the enemy. He was a paid informant of the police. How could he have been so foolish? And what was he, Guiliano, to do with him now? It was one thing to kill the field police in hot combat. It was another thing to execute, in cold blood, an avuncular older man. Turi Guiliano was only 21 years of age, and this was the first time he had to use the cold cruelty so necessary in great endeavors. He turned back to the others. Frizella has known me all my life. He gave me lemon ices when I was a child. Do you remember, Espano? And maybe he just gossips with the Mariciallo, doesn't really give him information. It's not as if we told him I was coming to town and then he told the police. Maybe he just gives theories and accepts the money because it is offered. Who would refuse? Passatempo was looking at Guiliano with narrowed eyes, as a hyena would regard the body of a dying lion, wondering if the time was ripe and safe to dash in and tear off a piece of flesh. Terranova shook his head slightly, a smile on his lips as if he were listening to a child tell some foolish story. But only Pisciotta answered him. He's as guilty as a priest in a whorehouse, Pisciotta said. We could give him a warning, Guiliano said. We could bring him over to our side and use him to give false information to the authorities when it suits our purpose. Even as he spoke, he knew he was wrong. He could no longer afford such gestures. Pisciotta said wrathfully, "Why not give him a present? A sack of grain or a chicken while you're at it? Turi, our lives and the lives of all the men out there in the mountains depend on your courage and your will, on your leadership. How can we follow you if you forgive a traitor like Frizella, a man who breaks the law of Omerta? The friends of the friends would have his liver and heart hanging from the barber pole by this time, and on no less evidence. If you let him go, then every greedy traitor will know he can inform once without punishment. One of those onces could be our death." Terranova spoke judiciously. "Frizella is a stupid buffoon, a greedy and treacherous man. In ordinary times he would only be a village nuisance. Now he is dangerous. To let him off would be foolhardy. He is not intelligent enough to mend his ways. He would think we are not serious people, and so would many others. Turi, you have suppressed the activities of the friends in the town of Montelepre. Their man Quintana moves very cautiously, though he makes some imprudent statements. If you let Frizella off with anything less than death, the friends would think you weak and test you further. The Carabinieri would become bolder, less afraid, more dangerous. Even the citizens of Montelepre would think less of you. Frizella cannot live." He said this last almost with regret. Guiliano listened to them thoughtfully. They were right. He was conscious of Passatempo's look and read to the man's heart. Passatempo could never be trusted if Frizella lived. There was no going back to being one of Charlemagne's knights. There was no going back to resolving differences in honorable combat on the fields of the cloths of gold. Frizella would have to be executed, and in such a way as to achieve maximum terror. Guiliano had an idea. He turned to Corporal Silvestro and asked, "What do you think? Surely the Mariciello would have told you his informants. Is the barber guilty?" Silvestro shrugged, his face impassive. He did not speak. They all recognized that it was a point of honor for him not to speak, not to betray his former trust. That his not answering was his way of telling them that the barber certainly had some contact with the Mariciello. Still, Guiliano had to be sure. He smiled at the corporal and said, "Now is the time to prove your loyalty to us. We will all go to Montelepre together, and you will personally execute the barber in the public square." Aspano Pisciotta marveled at his friend's cunning. Guiliano had always surprised him. He had always acted nobly, and yet could plant a trap worthy of Iago. They had all come to know the corporal as a truthful and honest man with a sense of fair play. He would never consent to perform the execution if he was not sure the barber was guilty, no matter what the cost to him. Pisciotta saw that Guiliano had a little smile on his face, that if the corporal refused, the barber would be judged innocent and go free. But the corporal stroked his bushy mustache and looked them all in the eye. He said, "Frizella cuts hair so badly he deserves to die for that alone. I'll be ready in the morning." At dawn, Guiliano and Pisciotta and ex-corporal Silvestro took the road down to Montelepre. An hour before them, Passatempo had left with a squad of 10 men to seal off all streets emptying into the central square of the town. Terranova was left in charge of the camp and prepared to lead a strong band into the town if they ran into serious trouble. It was still early morning when Guiliano and Pisciotta entered the town square. The cobbled streets and narrow sidewalks had been flushed with water, and some children were playing around the raised platform where the donkey and mare had been mated on that long-ago fateful day. Guiliano told Silvestro to chase the children out of the square so they could not witness what was about to happen. Silvestro did so with such temper that the children scattered like chickens. When Guiliano and Pisciotta entered the barber shop with machine pistols at the ready, Frizella was cutting the hair of a wealthy landowner of the province. The barber assumed they had come to kidnap his customer, and he whipped off the cloth with a cunning smile as if to present a prize. The landowner, an old Sicilian peasant who had grown rich during the war by selling livestock to the Italian army, stood up proudly. But Pisciotta motioned him to one side and said with a grin, "You don't have enough money to pay our price and for us to take the trouble." Guiliano was extremely alert and kept his eyes on Frizella. The barber was still holding his scissors. "Put them down," he said. "You won't need to cut hair where you're going. Now get outside." Frizella dropped the scissors and turned his wide buffoon's face into a clown's grimace as he attempted to smile. "Turi," he said, "I have no money. I just opened the shop. I'm a poor man." Pisciotta grabbed him by his full bushy hair and dragged him out of the shop and into the cobblestone streets where Silvestro was waiting. Frizella fell on his knees and began to scream. "Turi, Turi, I cut your hair when you were a child. Don't you remember? My wife will starve. My son is weak in the head." Pisciotta could see Guiliano wavering. He kicked the barber and said, "You should have thought of those things when you informed." Frizella began to weep. "I never informed on Turi. I told the Mariciello about some sheep stealers. I swear on my wife and child." Guiliano looked down at the man. At that moment he felt that his heart would break. Now what he was about to do would destroy him forever. But he said gently, "You have a minute to make your peace with God." Frizella looked up at the three men surrounding him and saw no mercy. He bowed his head and murmured a prayer, then looked up and said to Guiliano, "Don't let my wife and child starve." "I promise you they will have bread," Guiliano said. He turned to Silvestro. "Kill him," he said. The corporal had watched the scene in a daze, but at these words he triggered his machine pistol. The bullets lifted Frizella's body and sent it skittering across the wet cobblestones. Blood darkened the little pools of water between the cracks. Blood ran black over the cracks the water had not reached and flushed out little lizards. There was a long moment of hushed silence in the square. Then Pisciotta knelt over the body and pinned a white square of paper on the dead man's chest. When the Mariciello arrived, that was all he found as evidence. The shopkeepers had seen nothing, they claimed. They had been working in the rear of the store, or they had been studying the beautiful clouds over Monte Dora. Frizella's customer said that he was washing his face in the basin when he heard the shots. He had never seen the murderers. But despite all this, it was clear who was guilty. The square paper on Frizella's body read, "So die all who betray Guiliano."